participants of the conference, let us declare the second IP quorum open. This is a quorum on intellectual property rights, and it's my pleasure and privilege to welcome participants of the plenary session. IP code and its meaning for the economy and humankind. So IPQuorum, and it's a very important event at which we are going to discuss different issues pertaining to the topic of the conference. And today I'm happy to welcome representatives of 30 countries at the conference, and it shows us that the world has become really globalized, and intellectual property rights issues are very high on the agenda of different countries. Intellectual property is a space for open discussions. And I would like to thank Kaliningrad, the Kaliningrad region, on behalf of all participants of the quorum for welcoming us. And it's my pleasure and privilege to give the floor to the governor of the Kaliningrad region, Anton Alikhanov. Thank you. Thank you very much, Irina, for giving me the floor. I'm not going to take too much of your time. I would like to welcome all of you to Svetlogorsk, to the Kaliningrad region of Russia. It's the second time that we have welcomed this significant event, IPQuorum. And this event has developed in scale and in scope, and we are very pleased that Kaliningrad has been chosen already for the second time as a venue for this conference. And I'm not going to speak about the importance of intellectual property rights for humankind, for the economy of any country. This is obvious. I would like to say that the Kaliningrad region has moved forward in this area, and we did manage to attract 25 IT companies to the Kaliningrad region. And just recently we discussed with the representatives of the ministries of culture of the Russian Federation possibilities of developing this field here in the Kaliningrad region. So we are very much in line with what is happening in IP, in creative industries in the world. So that's why I would like to take this opportunity and welcome all those who would like to come to Kaliningrad, invest in the Kaliningrad economy, and develop solutions to the most important challenges faced today. Thank you very much again for choosing Kaliningrad as a venue for the quorum. Let me wish all participants of the quorum a successful work during these 3 days. Thank you. I would like to give the floor to Deputy I would like to give the floor to a representative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Pavel Mamontov. He will read the address of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, Sergei Lavrov, to participants of the forum. Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome all participants of the quorum on behalf of the Minister of International Affairs of the Russian Federation, Mr. Lavrov. Modern community faces many challenges as a consequence of changes, and all these modern processes open new horizons and set new tasks aimed at elaboration of new mechanisms and tools of intellectual property rights protection. So that's why the forum is very important in the discussion of further development of intellectual property rights protection. And I do hope that the participation of our colleagues and friends from many countries will help us analyze all the trends, current trends of modern economy, and find timely solutions to the most acute issues on our agenda. Let me wish all participants of the quorum successful work at the forum. Sergei Lavrov, 8th of April. Thank you very much, Mr. Mamontov. Let me give the floor to Mr. Mamadov, Director General of the Eurasian Confederation of the Societies of Rights Holders. Participants of the conference, ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome all of you on behalf of Director General and of our organization, and I would like to read the address, welcome address to you. On behalf of Eurasian Confederation of Right Holders, let me welcome all participants of IPQuorum 2019. The organizers of the quorum has offered a unique venue and format for the discussion of important discussions of intellectual property rights issues. The agenda of the forum includes intellectual property rights and cover all aspects of human life: science, economy, medicine, education, business, culture, and literature. Having united all these areas under the same umbrella term, IPQuorum, intellectual property rights, IPQuorum stresses once again the importance of the development of new economic relations in the digital era. Many issues that will be discussed at the quorum are best practices offered by different countries in the era of digitalization, the improvement of IP rights, the development of IT platforms for the protection of intellectual property rights. The European Confederation of Rights Holders oversees the development of new trends and their analysis and application of best practices in a variety of fields. We aim at the simplification of patent cooperation between different actors. Intellectual property rights are of conceptual importance in the digital era, and all the events organized in the framework of the IPQuorum 2019 will focus on the analysis of intellectual property rights as an indispensable element of digital economy. Let me wish all participants of the IPQuorum 2019 fruitful work on the questions of the agenda. Thank you. Thank you very much. And let me now introduce members of our panel discussion. Anton Alikhanov, Governor of the Kaliningrad region. So let us welcome the Governor of the Kaliningrad, Suren Grigoryan, from Armenia, the Chairman Andrei Krichevsky, President of the IP Chain Association, Secretary General of Eurasian Confederation, Lyudmila Novoselova, Chairman of the Intellectual Property Rights Court, Pavel Stepanov, Deputy Minister of Culture of the Russian Federation, Lyubov Kiri, Deputy Head of the Federal Service for Intellectual Property, Alexei Marukhin, Citronics Company, Anna Kostyra, Deloitte Legal in the CIS countries, Alexander Subotin, a member of the Commission on Industry of the European Commission of the Eurasian Commission, Vladimir Solovyov, the Association of the Journalists of Russia. So now we pass over to the next part of our discussion, and let us start with Andrei. Let us start with your contribution to our panel discussion. So intellectual property. So there are actors producing intellectual property. There are people who analyze intellectual property. There are those actors who contribute to the cooperation between all the actors. So you are at the forefront of this very complicated dialogue. So you unite Rospatent, the Court of Intellectual Property Rights, the leading universities specializing in the protection of intellectual property rights. How about the recipients? How about your clients, your customers? Do they contact you to protect their intellectual property rights? In other words, I would like you to speak on the latest trends in the protection of intellectual property rights.
As I mentioned today at the press conference, I will start from some other issues. Quite recently, we conducted a study and we analyzed different countries of the world and how the intellectual property works in the digital media, in the digital environment. So we analyzed the offers, the services, and we put everything into several segments like platforms, digital platforms, ecosystems, and digital services. We also identified two other levels, the digital infrastructure, in which all the other elements exist, and the regulative legislative mechanism. And we saw that actually nowhere else except Russia, we didn't find any elements in infrastructural component. There are ecosystems, there are other things, and ecosystems are quite a new concept for digital media. But we haven't found any media which will let other elements communicate smoothly. And well, just getting back to your question, so about the consumers, well, where are the consumers? Of course, consumers come to us, but we meet a different challenge when we communicate with other partners and other consumers. Like yesterday, we communicated with Citronics, and that's, well, just was a, well, kind of a new case when we talked to a major producer, and we understood each other, and that was really good. That was a new story. We also we communicated with Microsoft. We communicated with Lenovo. But everybody says, that's a beautiful spaceship, and space is great, but we don't know how to fly, and we don't know how to launch it. So my answer to your question would be that, yes, certainly digital infrastructure on its own cannot exist just on its own separately. So it can exist only together with other platforms, with the services which promote its development. Don't you think that you go a little bit, well, ahead of time? Yeah, well, probably just a little bit. Probably we have created something, well, ahead of time, but it's typical for Russia. And we can, well, just we can lag behind other countries in something, but in some aspects we are really, well, in advance. Well, we speak about some parameters like human capital, medicine, the, well, just the productivity, labor productivity, and, well, some other things. It's just with medicine, it's more or less okay. With the labor productivity, well, just we try to do our best. And when it comes to creativity, so we, well, just we try to be a little bit ahead of time. So yes, we looked into our future. Well, and we looked into something that we will get in our future, but even today we have to promote the services which exist. Today we spoke to our Kaliningrad partners, and they told us, yes, we've got the services, we've got the bids, and we write the bids, but so, and they asked us to include into the service infrastructure. And producers come to us. Some of them still do not understand how it can fly and how it can be launched. But yes, well, just we are moving. Can you speak about the challenge? What is the major challenge for you today? So the major challenge is that space is dangerous, or space can be scary. So, but just let's address Citronics company. Let's ask them, and let's ask Alexei Marushin what is important for them. So how to just the new services which provide some new platforms which make it possible to manage the digital economy and digital area. Just how do they work? So digital economy provides some or sets some requirements in terms of speed and in terms of content. new instruments are something that is necessary for us. I don't think that IP chain is in advance. I think now it is trying to catch up with the others. And now I think we have to proceed from some, just from some simple methods to the digitalization, the full digitalization. How do you see the major challenges in intellectual property? How do you see your major tasks and problems, the challenges? So the first task is to demonstrate some new mechanisms and how it works in comparison to what we used to have. I think that is the major challenge. So Governor Alekhanov, I would like to address you with a question about the regional administration issues. And so what about the concentration of intellectual property in this special economic zone? So your region is not very big, but it's okay when it comes to creative cluster, but it can never be very big. So then probably it's about the concentration of creative cluster and concentration of intellectual property. So just how do you see the major issues and major challenges for the region? So it's difficult to speak in the regional aspect because due to our geography, we can see several challenges. Like, we have to fight we have to fight for some new companies which can enter our local market, and these are mainly international companies, and it means that our intellectual property rights must be protected on the international level, and we are a little bit lagging behind. So we, for example, have some companies like the companies in pharmaceuticals which are still growing, and they are going through some hard times learning their first lessons, protecting their intellectual property rights. So it means that we would like to see some new technological solutions and probably cheaper solutions to achieve or just to get their intellectual property rights protected. So because when it comes to protection of the intellectual property rights, it becomes really very expensive for small and medium enterprises. We understand that the bigger enterprises, the major enterprises, scout around the world trying to find some creative people who produce something new, but who do not protect their rights effectively. And so it means that these people must be protected when they give out their the products of their creative work free of charge or for really little money. So I think that this issue is really important, and for me as the administrator, it is really very, the new challenge. So when we work in the Federation Council, we discuss the issues of intellectual property rights. And I think that these issues must be solved on the federal level, because for us, as a smaller region, resource-wise, that can be challenging when we compare ourselves to the Moscow region or to the Leningrad region. So we see that we are much smaller and we have got very limited resources. We don't have enough resources, and we understand that our development mainly goes to human development, the human resource development, because we don't have any other natural resource like other regions of Russia. So it means that we have to develop the human resource, and we have to put together the platforms which becomes the instruments for some creative development. So just like crowdsourcing platforms like IP chain and so on. So we see such companies as columns or just as the major background for such development. We have got a number of companies which work in IT, in game development, in apps development. Today, we opened the new engineering center of a major company, ABB, and they will be growing in the region. But there are not so many regions which have got their own instruments instruments for solving the issues of intellectual property rights protection. So these instruments, are they legislative? Well, not always. Today we spoke to our colleagues from the cartoon studio, and they said that, well, just you made our life a nightmare because we don't know which legislative standards to apply to our work, because we actually don't know what to focus on and which regulations to follow. So then I said that, well, actually it's important to have some, well, apps which are available or accessible on fingertips, because it's important to have something simple. It's important to have something really well efficient for both industries and the consumer environment, the consumer media. So because well, any legal company must have some very accessible service and very accessible instruments, but well, just as it happens in real life, they must come from the federal level. So we don't understand which institutes to involve, right? So, you know, I think that in our region, we have created one region, a kind of one organization, a kind of umbrella organization, which is the Center for Entrepreneurship Support. And it provides assistance to any funds which develop the business or just which cover the development of the business. And they don't know about any other instruments, any other federal mechanisms, well, how to be integrated into the business development. So we have got the center which assists the business development, but it's our original solution. So these conflicts, do they always deal from some, well, kind of from some attacks from afar or from beyond, or is it some kind of domestic fight? It's a very difficult issue because, well, I'm aware of some issues with some, well, actors from beyond, but at the same time we understand that there are so many issues of some kind of domestic offenses. Yeah. So, and it's not about only intellectual property rights, but it's about some other issues. So you know that we have got 10% principle that if the company grows 10% faster than 10% a year, it means that the company turns into a major one, into a major enterprise, and it catches some odd looks from other competitors, like, well, just what kind of support does this company get, and where does it come from? Is it some regional instrument, or is it the federal one? Thank you so much. There are different issues and different questions which can be addressed to any participants, and they are quite urgent, and they will just occur to us when we start speaking about the intellectual property. But one of the institutes which protects intellectual property rights is the Court on Intellectual Property Rights, and I would be happy to give the floor to Lyudmila Novoselova.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues. Participating in our panel discussion, which I'm enjoying, I would like to touch upon a number of issues which are connected with a broader, so to say, outlook, broader perspective of regulating intellectual property rights. And one of the topics of the IPQuorum is IP chain. And you know that intellectual products are now moving to the digital environment. And there are numerous examples of how it is done. And you know that, for instance, music, 90% is now exists in 90% of all music exists in the digital environment. And that's why we have to, the Intellectual Property Right Court has to learn how to process, to take into account digital evidence, digital testimony. And you know that that digital environment is a fast-growing one, and products, whatever they are, intellectual products, they are spreading. They spread with at a very high speed, and that's why we have to meet this challenge. And we have to catch up with all those actors who disseminate intellectual property in the digital environment, trying to take them to court. And we are doing our best, acquiring new techniques, new technologies of of finding digital evidence. We're looking for new approaches to legal regulation. And self-regulation is one of the most promising tools. And at the press conference, one of the speakers mentioned it, and major participants of the market try to negotiate within themselves how to behave in this new digital era, how to protect intellectual property rights, and how to protect their own intellectual products. And this is a very positive trend, this kind of cooperation between major players. And second important area is elaborating tools of solving conflicts in conflicts, for instance, applying to the Court of Appeal, defending intellectual property rights in the courts of appeal, and tertiary courts that already exist on some platforms. And all these new tools, they help us to ease the tension, finding the guilty ones and punishing the guilty ones and protecting the rights of the owners. Another issue that I would like to draw your attention to, this is a topic that is seldom discussed in the intellectual property rights context. We heard crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, these terms that have become buzzwords. I would like to take this opportunity and tell you that certain amendments have been made into the civil code, into the civil rights, and a new term, civil right, was introduced into the existing legislation. This is something new. This is a new development of the existing legislation. There's a special article on it, and this article describes, so to say, a minimum description of what it is, digital rights, and refers the users to a special law. So why was this amendment made? Because at the moment the government is drafting two laws, and I would like to inform all participants of the quorum about it, all those who are in intellectual property rights, financial assets, and investment platforms. These are, or crowdfunding. These two laws are being drafted at the moment. Digital platforms that are used at the moment for the transfer of intellectual property rights. These platforms are to be regulated within a new legislation. And the previous legislation that used to be and still is in effect does not regulate these digital platforms. So the new laws that are being prepared at the moment, they will regulate the functioning of the digital platforms, and regulators central bank actually can also use these platforms and see how operators, how actors behave on the digital market using digital platforms. And the states will have very powerful tools for regulating, controlling the market of intellectual property rights. And the transfer of intellectual property rights. And the same holds true about the second law on crowdfunding, and crowdfunding will be regulated by the new law which is being prepared, and licensing will also be envisaged by this new law, and all those companies who are involved in the development of a variety of services and applications. At the moment, they are unaware of the preparation of this new law regulating the activity. So that's why I think it would be very interesting for all those people involved in these two spheres to learn what is happening and how their activity will be regulated in the future. So it's time to stop and read, to be a bit more aware of what is happening in legislation regulating digitalization and intellectual property rights in the area of digitalization. So, of course, we don't want to impose strict frameworks on all our activity in the digital area, but still the laws are being prepared. And I would like to quote a Chinese proverb. So, of course, I don't know whether the translation is okay. So, when in the sphere, when the wind of change is blowing, somebody is constructing walls, and cleverer people are constructing windmills. So I want us to construct windmills to create something new from change. And let us hope that in the era of tomorrow we'll feel comfortable and successful. Thank you very much for your very interesting contribution. Unfortunately, we couldn't hear well some of it, but still, I would like to ask you another question. How could you describe your clients of those who come to the intellectual property rights, who appeal, who take matters to court?
So I would probably differentiate between the Human Property Rights Court and some other rights. So because we study the cases and we study the cases of the infringement of property rights, intellectual property rights, and we have got some representatives of the cartoon industry, for example. And so that's the, well, kind of major cases that we see the protection of the intellectual property rights on cartoon characters. Yeah, so there are so many violations of these rights. And so the people who come to the court, the people who, who are sued are people from smaller business and smaller medium enterprises, so who sometimes don't even know that there are some intellectual property rights and they must be protected and they cannot be violated. So I recently talked to the Association of Entrepreneurs and I asked them to pay attention to this problem because, well, that's probably their work to make the entrepreneurs aware of such rights, and they must conduct some workshops and seminars, and they must give them some talks to make our entrepreneurs understand that there is something which they violate. Yeah, because sometimes it's just outrageous when they break the rules, when they break the regulations. And I think that if there is some educational activity of this kind is conducted in the associations, we will have fewer cases of this character. So the second part of issues that we very often face is the applications to Ross patent, to patents which are given, and because there are so many people who apply to us with the cases in pharmaceuticals, just they filed the lawsuits against some companies, and there are quite many disputes about that, and they can be rather complicated, but they are so diverse that I cannot, trace any particular I cannot trace any particular, or I cannot, differentiate between them. I cannot put them into some particular category. But how literate, how digitally literate are people who come to your court? How legally illiterate are people who come to your court? Just what is the level of their legal literacy? Have they ever been protected by your court? Have they ever applied to your court? And do they know about the possibilities, the chances that they might have with your court? So just IP chain is in a little bit different thing. Today, we would like to we are speaking about some other issues, like, just making all our decisions digitalized, and so that they become public, so that people who study the same issues can get access to the result of some previous cases and our previous solutions. But when it comes to some ordinary people who come to the court, probably if they come to some arbitrary courts, and the arbitrary courts have been working with electronic digital legislation for quite a time. I think that people must be aware of that. And as it is all Russian court, so it means that, to conduct such cases digitally is much more efficient, because people cannot travel very far to apply to the court in some particular region or in some particular place. And now we have got the system of video conferencing, and almost all the courtrooms are well equipped with video conferencing technique and equipment. So I think that we can just have this feedback quite well. But my question was about the producers of intellectual property, and they just sometimes they are not very much aware of the ways how they can protect their intellectual property rights. Sometimes they have an idea, and they think that if they somewhere voiced the idea, it's their intellectual property and it must be protected. So I think that there are so many issues which we have to settle. So Pavel Vladimirovich, can you tell us a little bit about the challenges that you face in the Ministry of Culture when you talk to the producers of intellectual property?
Thank you very much for your question. You are absolutely right. We work with authors, with those who produce intellectual property products. We work with them more, and we meet them more often. And for them, it's very important to protect their intellectual property rights, their intellectual products, and they would like, of course, to have dividends, to have some income from their intellectual property rights. And it's very important for them for many reasons. First and foremost, because they want to have to get some money, to be reinvested into the industry, into their own industry. And I have to say that both the states and Russian regions invest a lot of effort offering support to all the initiatives in all spheres of culture. There are several foundations. The Foundation for Cinema providing state support to the development of cinema and cinematography in Russia, and there have been numerous projects which in cinematography cinematography, which are quite up to date, and I'm sure they will have a good audience. And I participated in the meeting of the Foundation of Cinematography of Russia, and I talked to participants of the meeting, and everybody said about a growing interest to cinematography in Russia, and it shows in the statistical data, in the money that we get from running films in Russia, domestic films, Russian films in Russia. So the interest has been growing. And similar tendency we have been observing in other fields, for instance, in the attendance of museums, in the attendance of theaters, and there are very interesting performances in Moscow theaters, in regional theaters, which have become very famous with the audience, and the houses, theaters are 90% full, and very often the theaters are full up to the doors. And theaters offers a wonderful opportunity of establishing an immediate contact with the audience, between actors and the audience. And we can talk to theater goers, and we are now celebrating the year of theater in 2019. And I would like to stress one very important fact, that whatever sphere of culture we speak about, we think of its development in the era of digitalization, and there are various factors that influence our creative industry and all creative industries. And first of all, of course, this is the protection of intellectual property rights in digitalization, the protection of digital products as well, and digital media is observed almost everywhere. You know that TV, all TV systems have been digitalized already in Russia, almost everywhere in Russia. So the coverage, digital coverage, is almost 100% at the moment, and this creates a new framework, a new context for our activity, changing the map, changing the character of human relations. There's another factor that I would like to speak about. This is the so-called convergence. So convergence as a phenomenon is observed everywhere in all institutes, including legislation, and this influences creative industries as well. And you remember a memorandum on intellectual property rights, and this memorandum is based on the best practices of DMCA, and I'm sure that this memorandum will be reflected on Russian creative industries. And of course, convergence is also observed in mass media, and we are witnessing this change. You know that TV channels, they are streamed on the internet, and there are internet versions of popular TV programs, and there are digital radio stations. There are a lot of new phenomena, and traditional mass media are going to the internet area, to the area of the internet. And of course, it affects the way we distribute intellectual property products. And IP chain, the IP chain story is very telling. Because IP chain and our experience of using IP chain for the protection of intellectual property rights, this was a very good attempt, creating good prerequisites for perfecting legal mechanisms and legal tools for the protection of intellectual property rights. So intellectual property rights have to be protected from the moment an intellectual product comes into being, and digital environment requires us taking into account its new laws, its tendencies, and we've been discussing all these recent trends for 2 years using the IPQuorum as a very good platform. And of course, we have to think about the future. We have to aim high, go into outer space. Yes, it's scary, but it's very challenging and interesting. So, using this metaphor, I want to say that being a pioneer, being the first to do, to find a solution to a challenge, we will succeed in protecting intellectual property rights. Because whatever phenomena, new phenomena we meet, we face on a daily basis, whatever new platforms we think about, they are breakthrough platforms and breakthrough solutions to the existing challenges of today. And of course, we are changing the role of intermediary between the producer and the recipient of intellectual product. Do you remember those producers of a soundtrack? When somebody produced and distributed a tune, but digital technologies actually have speeded up the time from the production to the distribution of an intellectual product. And technologies now perform the role of this intermediary instead of a person, a human being. And you see that the whole environment has been changing and is changing. Products, intellectual products are distributed in simply overnight. And we have to already now be ready for this rapid change, for this speeding up of all processes. We have to take into account new patterns of behavior of our recipients, behavior towards intellectual products. And it's very important, also very important to fight counterfeit and piracy when it comes to intellectual property rights. We have to defend producers of intellectual products. All of us are fully aware of the importance of exceptional rights. This is legal monopoly over an intellectual product. And the essence of this legal monopoly is creating favorable conditions for further distribution or further creation or recreation of intellectual products. But either by the same intellectual product producers or by somebody who they transfer the right to. And of course, we have to protect the rights of all people within the existing legislation. And we have to think about the perfection of the existing legislation. When we speak about the content which is produced by professionals, professional content, still we have to protect it from piracy, and piracy is unfortunately our everyday reality, and it requires our action, but it requires first and foremost legal action, not just simple responsibility, calling or appealing to pirates to become more responsible. This doesn't work. We have to be transparent. The markets of intellectual products should be transparent. Let us take social networks. So social networks are very often used for the transfer, dissemination of whatever information we may think of. And professional information, special information, whatever information we may really think of. And of course, we have to work with the social network and those who manage social networks, because social networks may or can contribute to the transparency of the intellectual products market. The more transparent is the market, the fewer opportunities are left for pirates to distribute illegally intellectual property. And the new digital era offers us good opportunities to counterfeit piracy. That's why the Ministry of Culture supports all initiatives aimed at it. And we would like, that's why the Ministry of Culture wants to participate, is willing to participate in IPQuorums discussing intellectual property rights in education, in culture, in medicine, and the state pays a lot of attention to intellectual property rights. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. We are a little bit pressed for time, so I would like to give the floor to the Vice President of the Rospatent. And how we would like to just to the Deputy Head of the Federal Service for Intellectual Property, Rospatent. And I would like to ask how Rospatent protects the federal, intellectual property rights. We are the institution which administers the industrial intellectual property. So we register the very fact when the intellectual property came into existence, when it is created. Then we register the property, and we register all the possibilities to protect the intellectual property. And I think that the major social issue is the underestimation of the importance and underestimation of the real facts of the intellectual property. So we don't see a rising tendency in the number of patents, and probably comparing to the previous years, we can see just a little higher number of patents, like 25,000 Russian patents from Russian researchers, but it's really very little. If we compare ourselves to the United States, we understand that it's, almost nothing. So China gets twice as many patents as Russia. So, and that is something that we have to grow for. Yeah, we have to grow the number of the applications for patents in the intellectual property sphere. So the trademark statistics is a little bit better, and the number of the annual number of applications is growing, and it means that our market is just our market operates the production of the Russian companies, and they must be registered. As for the digital economy, it is growing, and we have already launched a service for the patent applications. It is not as substantial as for the trademarks. So as for the trademarks, so we have got about 70% of applications about trademarks. We would like to grow further, but we can say that, our people are a little bit more conservative, and they are not very willing, they are reluctant to use some electronic applications when they come to registering their trademarks. I could say that only about 30% of all the applications come electronically. And of course, we want the people representing some technical spheres be more active in more convenient services, in using more convenient services, like using the electronic forms of patent applications. That's the joint portal, service portal of Rospatent, and we have got some outside systems, the outside means and systems of communication where we can you can reach us with your electronic patent application. So it's much more convenient to us to upload the necessary information, and we can handle the electronic applications with better ease, and we can start the application process as soon as we get your application. So it means that we can shorten the terms for applications radically. So we used to have the complaints that it took about several years for some applications to be studied, but now we work much more efficiently. There is, by the way, another danger that some of our experts can work too fast, and they do not deal very attentively with all the applications. So it means that we develop some other electronic services, and sometimes, they seem to have not very much in common with the patent studies, but at the same time, they there is efficiency. So we provide the services which relate to patent analytics or analysis, and we will hear the presentation of one of the participants of this work in this conference. But I would like to say that the customers of this new service are the leading Russian corporations, and they need the patent analytics, they need the patent analysis. And so it is really very important to build up the strategy of corporations. And the major investors like banks and other companies are, very much interested in such new patent analysis. And I think that this type of activity wouldn't be possible without our experts who understand how to evaluate the patent, how to to analyze these or those tendencies, the analytical tendencies, or just the tendencies of patent growth. So we try to make our patent experts be more active in patent research and patent analysis. So, and that is only one type of work that we are conducting. And I see the future of all the patent agencies in providing this type of service. At the same time, our internal work is being advanced. So it's not only about the time that we spend on each particular patent, but it's about canceling, or it's about refusing some formal expertise, and just automatizing our just the bulk of our work. So it means that we are trying to grow the amount of work which is conducted electronically, and it means that we must employ, or we will be employing, fewer people, like physical people, physical experts. So then we also develop some networking electronic systems or neuroelectronic systems which can learn which can be educated and which can learn the results of our analytical work. And it means that we will improve this electronic search. I remember the time when we started this type of neuroanalytics. So just in the beginning of this work, the artificial intelligence let us analyze about 30% of coincidences, of correspondences in the analysis of patents. But now this figure is almost about 70%. So, and it means that electronic system can give us the list of of precedents in patent work, and it of course intensifies the work of our experts very much. So I can speak a lot about our work, but I would probably focus on our cooperation with Yandex. Now, Yandex has got the area Yandex patent, and you can use Yandex service, Yandex browser, to just to find the information about the recent patents, and you can see how everything is developing, and you can see what the areas are promising for patenting and for developing. Thank you so much. It was really very interesting to watch the reaction of people in the Presidium when you mentioned artificial intelligence. So it means that it was a step into future, step into tomorrow. So, but when we start talking about the intellectual and industrial intellectual property rights, I would like to address the president of Citronics company. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the organizers of the IPQuorum for inviting me to take part in this event. Of course, digitalization is the reality of today, and all the new phenomena pertaining to digitalization. Can you hear me now? Yes. Thank you. So our company, Citronics company, is a high-tech company, and we have been working on intellectual products, which are different types of software, computer software. And we have implemented several projects in a variety of fields, a variety of sectors of our economy. So we worked with the transport system in Moscow, contact-free entry to the underground, Moscow underground. This project was implemented during the preparation for the championship 2018. So we're working on the software of analytical software products. We have 30% market share in Moscow, and we have a team of qualified software designers, software engineers, and every day we do with the issue of the protection of intellectual property rights. And today I would like to say that the system of protection has developed, and it has become multi-leveled, and the mechanisms of the protection are becoming more sophisticated. And without this sophistication, it's impossible to think of the developments of tomorrow. That's why our company has always supported IP chain projects, and we have been an active participant of IP chain projects. So that's in a nutshell what I wanted to say. Thank you. I would like to announce that IP Chain Association, Andrei Krichevsky and Citronics, Alexei Marunin, are going to sign an agreement on cooperation on intellectual property rights. And we would like to congratulate Andrei Krichevsky and Alexei Marukin on signing this agreement, this new type of agreement. Thank you. So let's go ahead. So the signing will take place a little bit later, but I've already made an announcement of the signing. So I would like to give the floor to Anna Kasturina. Thank you very much for the invitation to take part in the IPQuorum and in the panel discussion. It's a good opportunity for me to present the Deloitte company and to tell you how we work and communicate with businesses. We implement a number of projects. And within these projects, we have two challenges when it comes to the development of intellectual property in Russia. So big pharmaceutical companies, the sharks of Russian business, they very often come to us asking to protect their intellectual property rights. And tomorrow, I checked the program. Tomorrow we are going to discuss very important issues pertaining to our cooperation with businesses. The existing legislation Russian legislation is in line with the existing international legislation on intellectual property rights. We are participants of international conventions, the Paris Convention on Intellectual Property Rights. But now the most important issue is to implement and to use this legislation. We belong to 4 biggest companies, and I think that the state and the business have to agree on how to communicate, on R&D, in R&D, in research and development. We have to think about using privileges that granting by the state to our advantage. For instance, there is a privilege. There is one of the privileges is the right given to business to use 1.4% of their income to invest it into our R&D. But have you ever tried to do it? How easy is it? Businesses understand how difficult it is to get the money, to get the permission to invest the money into your own R&D. I understand that this is a very difficult question and probably shouldn't be discussed in the framework of this IPQuorum, but still it is an important issue, because very often, in order to use this money for the benefit of companies, we have to apply to experts for assessment whether this or that project can be considered as an R&D project, and only then, having had their conclusion on the profile of our R&D, companies can invest this money. And there are fiscal authorities, they cannot, or taxation authorities that cannot limit us in our application of all the privileges that the state grants businesses. And where is the borderline between an intellectual property right and an R&D? And we have to elaborate a set of criteria characterizing this or that project or this or that document, and how a set of criteria, for instance, separating a license from an agreement, and so on and so forth. So we need to perfect a system of criteria that allows us to separate one product from another, one R&D product from a non-R&D product. And if we have done it, then businesses can get funding for that. Have you heard about a privilege on taxation that allows you to monetize your own intellectual property rights in 2018 and 2019? So I talked to many businesses, and they have never heard about these privileges on taxation. So taxation authorities should not only insert barriers or create some frameworks. They should facilitate. The development of business. And please come to us, come to our organization, to our company. We will tell you how you can use software programs for your own benefit. We can teach businesses how to use the products of R&D developments, how to turn it into an intellectual property rights product, and how to get taxation benefits. And this is a logical chain that we are ready to explain to businesses, and we are helping companies to monetize, to capitalize on their R&D, to turn the existing legislation to their benefit. We use expert consultants who can do it, and we offer very good software that allows you to speed up your own financial operations. That's very briefly and very quickly what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Just some short comment on the words that we have heard. I would just talk about our position, our view. So if you work in Kaliningrad, you don't have to think where you can where you can report your profit. So just because you have zero tax on profit if you work in Kaliningrad. But I heard some ideas which are really very topical even today, like the REITs. Yeah. So just the when I used to be an official of some Ministry of Trade, so I remember the times when we had a huge amount of these REITs, the results of intellectual property rights, and we didn't know how to deal with that, and just we sometimes had serious issues. Just how to process everything. But today I heard that the number of patent application is just half or 3 times as lower as in China. But let's have a look at the share of our country in the world economy, and let's compare it to Chinese share in the global economy. So then everything, the picture is not as gloomy. So it means that we are even better than China, due to, just in comparison to the share in global economy. So it means that in patent activity and in, just some other activities, we are even leading the China. So that's my point of view. That's my understanding of the matters. But, just with the results, which I remember from my past, the results of intellectual activity, we couldn't do anything. And just we have to identify what we protect. So does it sometimes mean that we protect just a, pile of paper, the report, which, actually does not have any value? So we protect it, but just how we can capitalize on it, and is it something that can be capitalized? So yes, that's the issue which we have been discussing. So I always speak about the quality of patents. I speak about the just actually evaluating the IQ of patents. Yeah, so that's what we are speaking about. So just in one of the engineering enterprises, I saw the frames with the patents which were which were hung behind the director's chair, and I asked, how do you monitor the patents? Just how do you trace the real life of the patents that you registered? So, and nobody could answer this question because actually nobody monitors how the patents work. So if when we speak about the Chinese legislation and Chinese patent activity, I think that they are tremendously active. So just it's about 60% when, just 60% of global intellectual market is Asian, is Chinese or Asian, and most of that is junk. It's just those piles of paper that you've talked about. So it means that, just we are not doing so badly. So just that we are doing quite well. So, and we are working with real creators and with, real, people who produce real patents. So just the Kaliningrad region is doing well, you think? So 62 patent applications in the Kaliningrad region, and that's on the background of 25,000 in Russia. So yeah, I can comment on that. Yeah, so our colleagues from Baltic Federal University and our other experts say that special economic zone gives birth to some lazy companies. So, and that's what we can see. So we also try to follow the patents which are registered, and about 60% of all our patents are being implemented, and we have the reports that they are implemented, and we have got the same reports from the Kaliningrad region. So, but what I call you for is to register patents and to get the legal rights, legal copyright on what you do. And I'm sure that the Kaliningrad region is the place of potential. So we have got an office in Kaliningrad, and we have got an R&D department here, but everything that we produce, we register in Moscow. So let's go on, and let's invite Alexander Subotin, a member of the Association of Eurasia Commission on Intellectual Property Rights, to join in our discussion. Actually, we have discussed so many issues, and I wouldn't be my remark wouldn't be too new. But when I have listened to everybody here, I would say that we also deal with the same issues in Eurasia Union. So we are going to celebrate 5th anniversary this year, and I think that it's high time we conducted some real project, and because it will be really important to make something useful for everyone. Then I would say that in many branches of industry, it becomes a new tendency to digitalize everything, to go digital. But sometimes the producers do not understand how they do it, and some of the producers do not understand the word digitalization. We are going to launch a number of projects within our union, and the projects can become very good examples can illustrate very well the idea that it's better to work together. One of the projects is about industry, and we are preparing a comprehensive digital platform for industry. So now it exists as just a number of smaller platforms which are not very coordinated, which are not very well coordinated between. But we are going to create an umbrella digital platform, which can become a very good instrument for the industries in any branch of industry, no matter what it is. So it can be useful for them. When it comes to the intellectual property rights protection, and especially when you see it with the eyes of a person whose background is in research, you understand that, if you see a kind of a diamond, if you see a real masterpiece in intellectual property activity, so you have to patent it because you have to protect it. And I think that patent activity is one of the indicators of economic development in any branch of economy. And when we speak about this patent landscape, behind it we understand it not only as the assessment of your future development, but it is used by industry as an analytical tool which can help you develop further and which can help you develop some particular strategy. So the system which we are creating would be really useful and important for the industries, because it will represent a kind of unified platform which can help protect the intellectual property rights, and which can be a kind of device or search tool for some already registered patents and some already registered ideas. And I think that it really will be very helpful, and as soon as we are ready, we will certainly address the colleagues, and we will certainly consider the just the results of our discussion. So it means that the discussion is very fruitful to us. So when it comes to creating some kind of unified platform, thank you very much. Thank you for your contribution. And just let's analyze what our foreign participants, international participants, can talk about the same issues. Like, well, we address Suren Sabvelovich, so just to join in our discussion and to add the contribution to our discussion.
Thank you very much for inviting me to take part in such an important event. Of course, I have listened to all the contributors, and I was just thinking what my contribution should be about, because a lot of very important things have been said, and almost everything that my fellow colleagues mentioned are on the agenda in Armenia. And it ranging from legislation, state support to the protection of intellectual property rights and many other things that my fellow colleagues mentioned during the panel discussion. And the focus of all our activity today is on high technologies, on high tech and digitalization, and we are setting up a separate ministry on technology, on high tech ministry in the government of Armenia, and a special agreement was signed on the management on intellectual property rights, working together with the Eurasian Federation of Intellectual Property Rights holders. And I would like to apologize for my very emotional reaction, and first of all to what I heard, and then I apologize for the way I look, because my luggage probably this was a mistake of artificial intelligence. My luggage has been lost somewhere on the way from Moscow to Kaliningrad, so my apologies to the audience. And of course, my country, we are planning to launch a series of events similar to this one to discuss intellectual property rights involving parliamentarians, legislative and executive authorities, and drawing their attention to this very important issue of today. Without their participation, we wouldn't be able to solve these problems. And thank you very much, the organizers, for inviting me to speak at the event. So Vladimir Solovyov, President of the Union of Journalists of Russia, please. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends. Let me welcome you on behalf of the Union of Journalists, one of the biggest professional unions of journalists in the world. So we have 500,000 journalists. Are you sure that you have counted everybody? For instance, I'm a journalist, but I'm not a member. I hope you will join us. Whole newspapers become our members. So we have 500,000 journalists in Russia, and they produce daily a large amount of intellectual content. And this content is uploaded to the internet, and even without it, there are numerous cases of piracy, of illegal use of intellectual property rights. I would like to remind you of one case. You know the journal Nauka и Жизнь, Life and Science, and many of us used to be subscribers to this journal. And at the end of this journal, there was a particular section. We have lots of inventors in Russia, you know, and at the end of one of the sections of this journal was for inventors' ideas, and whoever could write could send their idea to this journal. And we learned years later that one Japanese became a millionaire. He found a couple of old issues of this journal, and he stole these ideas and patented them, and he actually learned a fortune. And there's no going back, because this Japanese person got all these inventions patented. And of Of course, the internet and things that we can find on the internet today, all the intellectual content has to be protected. And it's not accidental that we, the Union of Journalists, signed an agreement with our colleagues in Russia and abroad to protect intellectual property rights. And we spoke about a high speed of everyday life. Life has become much faster. And if we imagine the whole volume of information that appears every day in the World Wide Web, 90% of this information have been uploaded during the last 3 years. And that's why we have to catch up with this speed and even go much faster, protecting our intellectual property rights. And journalists are at the forefront of this work. And of course, not all texts created by journalists, they are sort of the same in their coverage. But still, every piece of writing is important, let alone videos, let alone photos. And I was head of the documentary films of Russia TV channel. And all of us who are in documentaries, you know how difficult it is to have a license or a permission to use this or that tune, this or that melody in a documentary. And one of the documentaries, each documentary that is shown on Russia channel ends up on the internet, and it is distributed widely on the nets, and nobody protects intellectual property rights of people who created it. And that's why we thought it's important to protect, to work in this direction, and we signed an agreement with IP Chain and use IP Chain projects to protect intellectual products. We want to give it a try, and we want to see where our weak points are and how to be more efficient, more effective in protecting our colleagues' creative products, intellectual products. Apart from it, we announced a competition together with the IP Chain Association. Intellectual property, the main driver of digital economy. That's the name of the competition. The competition is aimed at the introduction of high technologies in the protection of intellectual property rights in a wide variety of fields, including mass media, including economy. And this competition offers very interesting prizes. So I would like to use this opportunity and appeal to all of you to take part in this competition. And the prizes range from 100,000 to 300,000 rubles. So let us go back to the topic of intellectual property rights during this forum and next forum. And I would like to wish all of us successful work and more success in your creative activities. Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to note that the Union of Journalists protects intellectual property rights of their own members. But you mentioned this sad fact that the documentary films can be seen on piracy torrents, and this is a real problem,
Yes, certainly that's a very big problem. There are so many issues related to internet broadcasts, internet streaming, which are not regulated by legislation, and it's really a very sad fact. So we certainly must hear the opinion of the chairman of the committee on the State Duma on intellectual property rights, Anatoly Maksakov, and he is not present today, but he sent his video address.
IPQuorum. Желаю вам успешной, активной работы.
Dear colleagues, I'm happy to welcome you to the forum, and I wish you very good success. Because for us, the economic development,
который позволяет, используя биометрические данные, получать удаленно финансовые.
For us, economic development and digital development are things which go hand in hand, because it is important to apply for the just legal application of all the results of intellectual property, intellectual activity, and it must be digitalized. We have accepted a number of laws and legal regulations which make it possible to legally use the rights of intellectual, to legally use the digital results, and which make it possible to use digital platforms for the companies, so that they could attract more investment and they could make their startups and other projects more technologically advanced and more and better known. So that is our reality, that is our digital reality and economic reality, and we do hope that your discussions at the forum will make it possible to come up with some new ideas to just to make our laws more efficient, and we will be able to perfect our legislation so that it can and make the best of it. So we wish you all the possible success and efficient work. Thank you. And then, so on our agenda, we are going to sign the agreement that we have talked about before. So just the procedure is the following. So just I will stand aside and you will have the table with the text of agreement, and you will have to come up here and sign the agreement. So just a few seconds and everything will be ready.
Соглашение о развертывании и включении узла.
That is the agreement on the development of the inclusion of the results of intellectual property rights into the national economy. And that is signed by Andrei Krichevsky, president of IP Chain Association, and Alexei Maruyin, the president of joint company Citronics. So just
Пожалуйста.
So please come up to the center of the stage so that we can make a picture. Our congratulations, and another agreement on cooperation between the National Register of the International Intellectual Property, represented by Oleg Nekrasov, and the Journalists Union of Russia, represented by Vladimir Solovyov.
Есть ли что подписывать? Да, вот, все на месте.
Еще одна подпись. Кстати, коллеги, я хочу сказать, что мне...
Well, just it's not the chance, or it's not the accident that we sign these agreements. So please, our colleagues journalists, please keep in mind that now you can have some discount when you write, and if you are a member of the Union of Journalists. So just you must become a member of the union if you want to have some discount.
Дамы и господа, я всем
Ladies and gentlemen, I do hope that we are going to have some more efficient discussions, and I'm grateful to